and Mackey's Shiny Side Out on Revolution Radio for Revolution.radio from Australia, the land down under. That's right, full of crisis actors that are really in Denver Airport. Under Denver Airport. Home to ideas, which are dangerous, always.
I think we should start.
Dangerous. Ideas are no good. They're not good to anyone. Don't have any ideas. They'll just upset all the people in charge. Just don't have any ideas. Oh, okay. Anyway,
I think there's a message in that for all of us.
There sure is. This is show number 666.
66.
What? Run for the hills. It's the number of the beast. If you want rock and roll. Oy vey. Yeah, 666. That's where we are. There's going to be a few things we're going to joke about throughout the show, I'm sure. You can catch us on the air, on the line all the time, and on your smart device to grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. Thank you very much. If you missed last show, that's okay, because the archives, as I was going to mention later, I'll do it now, the archives are free. They're free. Another good reason to do what I'm going to ask you in a second. Now, they're free. Having said that, if you can, donate, but Solaris is in the archives, and she had Talib Jensen and Zoe B. Greystone as her guests just before us. So if you missed it, go ahead in the archives, which are free, and indulge to your heart's content. But if you can donate, please do. The station doesn't get any money from anybody else. Right? So if you can, that would be great. If you can't, I dig it. You know why? Because things are tough all over. They really are, and they're getting harder for people. So tell people about the station instead. If you can, tell people about the station. That's goodness too. Okay? And more importantly, I would like to acknowledge the true custodians of the land. And Dave and I will continue to do this, even if it falls out of favor with the rest of Australia.
Yeah.
And for Dave, that's...
It's the Doc and Joe.
Thank you, sir. For myself, the Direct people, and we like to pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. And I'll tell you why. Some things are just true. I mean, they don't need any extra, outside validation or whatnot. And the truth here is essentially that there were people here before us, before Australia. I mean, before 200 years of the establishment of Australia. In fact, for a long, long time. In fact, many probably we know there are about 4 or 5 distinct migrations that happened over the last 50, 60,000 years across Australia, where different peoples came from all over the world, forming what is what we know now as the Aboriginal people in Australia. But there were 4 or 5 distinct migratory waves that came into Australia. And then Johnny come lately came the Europeans, and claimed there was no one here. We found it all. It didn't exist before we found it. Here it is. Woo! Mine. Mine. It's mine. But that's
there's some bipedal people, but they're just, let's just consider them part of the fauna.
That's exactly what happened. And similar, of course, happened during the colonial period in the rest of the world. Europeans decided, we don't like it cold in the winter, and we like some spice in our life. We're gonna go see what's out there in the world. Yeah, and off they went. And nobody really enjoyed that. Africa, South America, well, North America really as well. Africa, did I say Africa? I said Africa. I should say Africa 3 or 4 times because they really did a number on Africa.
What happened. Mm-hmm.
Asia, Australia's sort of later, one of the last.
Yeah.
To be colonized. I mean, initially it was a prison colony for the English. If you stole an apple, you could buy yourself a one-way ticket to Australia. Back in those days, that wasn't a good thing.
That was a government scholarship.
That was the government scholarship. We'll teach you. Come to the School of Hard Knocks. And, yeah, so, but there were people in all of those places. It's a very interesting story. This is important. Early explorers, 16th, 17th century, 15th century even, explorers, Spanish explorers, Portuguese explorers, even English explorers, they went into the Amazon, the South American continent, along the rivers, through the jungles, and they spoke of these massive cities, with tens of thousands of people. right? And it really, like, they compared it to the European cities of the time, and maybe even superior to some of the European cities of the time. Then a few decades later, you know, the reports had made it to Europe, and then a few decades later, other explorers would come. They found nothing. All they found was jungle.
Give them some more blankets.
Yeah, give them some more blankets. Yeah, nothing. There was nothing. And turns out, you know, that they thought that the original explorers, they were just, you know, trying to put one on, you know, get more funding for more expeditions, and then essentially they were dismissed as fantasy, those reports, the initial reports. Turns out, though, that they were correct. These cities did exist. In fact, the entire Amazon basin, it seems, is a cultivated zone. The entire Amazon basin is a parkland. Well, was a parkland, with specially created soil. You might have heard of Black Earth, maybe not. Well, now you have. Look it up yourself. As well as, you know, irrigation and roads. Big cities, I mean, metropolises, right? Temple complexes, we guess, we don't really know, right? Pyramids, all kinds of things. Earth cliffs, massive earth cliffs, of a purpose we can no longer divine. So what most likely happened is that maybe some of those cities had been, you know, destroyed a long time ago, but maybe others were destroyed after the initial Europeans passed through, leaving, as Dave so eloquently put earlier, their blankets. Maybe unintentionally so, right? But, you know, all the European ailments such as smallpox and typhoid and all the good stuff.
We developed an immunity to it and passed it on.
Yeah, and they just didn't have that immunity.
Right.
And similar in Africa, but the Americas were, both North and South America, they were devastated by the European viruses. Devastated. I mean, if you think, I mean, initially the estimate is that millions of people had died from it, right? But now that we're discovering all these massive cities, and not just in South America, but also in North America, now we're thinking, well, you know, maybe we killed more. Maybe we killed tens of millions of people.
Oopsie doodles.
Oopsies.
That's what it says.
And again, you know, there was no, well, I don't think there was any malice of forethought when people just thought that those early explorers were embellishing. They just couldn't find it because the jungle had reclaimed those lands.
And it does it so quickly too, you know.
Oh, 100%. And the survivors might have, you know, fallen back into more primitive modes of existence. And after, you know, a couple of decades, maybe even 100 years or 200 years, the original civilization and learning that was there would no longer exist, because if you kill 80-90% of the population, you destroy the infrastructure, you destroy, you know, all means of educating the young and, you know, giving them the same kind of life that existed for you. It'll all just it'll end. Your civilization will effectively end, because it no longer has a critical mass. It no longer self-propels, and it's really quite terrifying, to be honest with you, because it just goes to show how quickly they can go. Really, I mean, after 150 years, really, but let's say a couple 100 years pass after an event like this, and nobody remembered anything. Nobody remembered. It couldn't even be found. I mean, imagine we have an outbreak for, you know, let's hope not, but let's say that we're like a really bad outbreak of whatever, and, you know, the vast majority of the human population just succumbs to that. If 90-95% of the population go away, our civilization will simply stop. We can no longer run any of the stuff that we are running today. It'll just be, what can I eat? That'll be the prime concern, you know, where do I live and what will I eat? Do I have clean water? That will be it, because none of the things that we take for granted will exist any longer. So I guess it's an object lesson. But anyway, that was just something I wanted to bring up, because it really bothered me a lot when you know, when this sort of came through, and especially in Australia here, where you know, the Liberal
on
Party
December
now said, now we're gonna not have welcome to country anymore. We have to remember the people that went before us, and even if it's just acknowledging, you know, this was their land at some point, and saying thank you for having looked after it for such a long time, even if it's just that, you know, I mean, as little as that is, but we should remember it. Anyway, But Dave, there's so many interesting things that happened this week, and one is really weird, right? The drone one.
Yeah, and I don't think the story is over. Yeah, in a long shot. Yeah. So, if I had to say anything about it immediately, I would say that governors of the states, of each of the states, it's not just New York. Apparently they're in LA now, and they're around the world in European countries and everything like that, right? So let's not exclude it. So the governors are saying, you know what, I'm with the FBI. We need to pass a law to be able to shoot them down. It's a bill. They want it to reform legal authorities to counter UAS, is what they're calling it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, because maybe that's all this is all about. Oddly, the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary, talks about what is known about the drones, and I've got the screenshots there. You can look for them yourselves on YouTube and do whatever you want to do. And he says, there's nothing to any of it. They're just human-powered flight. It's all aircraft, misidentification, nothing to see here. Don't even worry about it. And in the same sentence, that's what he said. Right? You can watch the video yourself, and I'll distribute the links in the chat. So he said, this is Homeland Security, said nothing to it. It's all rubbish. It's only human powered flight. Don't worry about it. There's nothing here to worry about. In the same breath, he goes, and we need to pass a bill to shoot down the drones. And the interviewer goes, well, you said there weren't any drones. He goes, no, that's right. There aren't. There's no drones. Right? So for me, from a government standpoint, the whole thing could simply be manufactured using After Effects and stuff to make, regular people's videos. And once you've done that, you've got enough interest, everyone's got their cameras up looking at anything in the sky thinking it's a drone, right? I'm the first person in the world, I'm in the front of the queue, that would want it to be something. Honest, I would love it to be something. I'd love it to be, say Eisenhower did sign an agreement with the Greys, and they live underwater in the Southern Ocean. I want that to be true. I really do. That'd be fantastic. The closer we get to our own doomsday, it would be lovely. Oh, wouldn't it be a miracle? Not a miracle, it'd just be factual, if the Greys landed on the White House lawn and said, what happened to that agreement? You said you weren't going to do any of this, and now look at you guys, you're a bunch of pork chops, right? Stop it. We've been here the whole time, and the government has to eat humble pie by saying, you know what? Yeah, we did sign an agreement with them 70 years ago now, believe it or not. 70. Or thereabouts. And if that were true. I'm not saying it's true. But out of the two stories, which one is the most plausible right now? The government just wants to be able to shoot drones down, so let's create some hysteria so we can. Because they haven't. Now, the government also claims that they're harmless, or in their words, they don't pose a threat. And they've already understood that whatever's going on, they're not from a military adversary, which is fantastic. If they're not real, that's fantastic. So one of the governors, I think the governor of New Jersey or something, he's jumping up and down and waving his arms like the robot from Lost in Space, warning Will Robinson, right? He said, we have to shoot one down and collect it and understand what we're really facing here. And he goes, there's an Iranian mothership off the coast. Now,
yeah, that was funny.
I know. So someone whoever his handler is, is feeding him all these lines which are going to do him in the end. But they're amplifying the hysteria and making this way bigger. Is there a single story with Biden in it? Nope. Is there barely even a Trump story at the moment? Nope. There's nothing, and this is drowning everything out. And according to the Homeland Security Secretary, it's all completely nonsense. Now, I'm going to stand by my my thoughts that it's, if there is something there, if there is, because I've seen all the footage, I'm up to date with all it. I don't think there's any footage I haven't seen. That's a big call, but I've got friends of mine that send me all this stuff all the time, and I'm watching it myself, and I've got a lot of time up my sleeve at the moment, and I don't really see anything that says it is. Now, if only one of them is real, fantastic. Hurrah! Good on you, whoever you are, military contractor or alien. I don't really care. I really don't. Whatever the outcome is, it's not going. The only thing that's going to affect me is what happens in our lives. Nothing else is going to matter. It doesn't really matter. Remember, it took the government, it took the president to order the strike down of that Chinese balloon with the equipment on it.
Mm.
So they couldn't just do it. And then, what happened? I'm going to ask you, Meki, what happened to those other drones they shot down over the Canadian border?
Well, we don't know what they were, right? I mean, some say they're balloons. There was some kind of crafts were shot down. And you know what? The funny thing is, because Paul Hovey, a friend of the show's, also kept following up on it. There was complete radio silence on all, and we have no idea what happened. There's been no follow-up.
The story went
nothing.
offline.
Zero. You can find the original stories, and then there's absolutely nothing. Not even like, we recovered some this, or it's a weather balloon.
That's right.
It's no longer a story.
There were people claiming that they knew that they'd been collected, and there was, that the last media outlet I saw talking about it said next week they'll be telling us what they found at the crash sites or whatever, right? And that was it. Yeah, they didn't. So look, we have pundits out there talking about massive USO disclosure events in a physiological operation, and he says he's predicting that. That's one thing. And then I was watching a live mysterious drones in New York shut down airport runways. So, not all of these stories can be true. Not all of them. Because they counter each other. And it doesn't make any sense that the Homeland Security person is denying everything, and that the people have one story. Military observers who are trained observers say that there's something going on. If a New York shutdown, like an airport shutdown happens, they don't happen for no reason. That's a huge cost to the airport to do something like that. So there must be enough doubt in the airport staff and security and everything and all the radar systems to be able to have to shut that down because of something, right? So this is why I don't care. I have no skin in the game here apart from let's see who was right. If you're a D&D player, I think this is like a D25 roll. Anything above 16 says that aliens are real, right? I know that sounds preposterous, but think about it. If the government is denying everything completely, then for me it has to be contractors, or like contractors displaying their prowess in their new machinery, because that would be great, right?
Well, they're not saying anything unusual about these so-called drones. Like, no one is talking about how they're moving very fast, or they're turning at impossible angles.
There's a few witnesses that have said those things, and they're completely silent. But I've noticed some of the footage, Mackie, they've cut in some old footage to
Oh, really?
display. Yeah. So, all of the sources of these, what people have been filming. I noticed a couple of them were the black TR-3B videos, and I can't verify that they're real or not. That they're definitely a triangle with lights on each corner, right, pointing down. So, if it's really aliens, fantastic. If they're alien reproduction vehicles, then what it says, blue beam commencing. It feels like, and my neighbour reminded me today, this feels like Don't Look Up. But everyone's looking up. But the government's saying there's nothing to see. And you're going, but I'm looking at something. Right? And they go, that's just a plane.
No.
And you go,
Yes.
well, it doesn't make any sound that it's turning at right angles. Who's, all the other junk that they're putting to air are making people calm and happy in their own lives by showing an F-16. I watched one, and it had the roar of an F-16. It wasn't silent, and it didn't do right angle turns. Now, one of the biggest arguments is, if these are aliens, why have they got their lights on? Just saying. It's a preposterous idea.
It's just a very odd story. I mean, it really is very odd, and
totally.
it makes no sense. What does these days? I don't even know.
No, for what makes sense these days, it doesn't make any sense. And with all the things that are going on, like I saw a tweet from RFK saying that he's interested in reforming the rules around food production in the US. So he said the food I don't want to paraphrase it. Have a look. If you're into RFK, go onto Twitter and look him up, and you'll see what his tweet is. Right. I'm not gonna do that because my commentary is I think that's a really good idea that people should be doing this. And this is yet one of those things, Mickey, and I'm going to hand it to you. Right. It's one of those things where someone approached the government with a great idea to make a lot of money, has made a lot of money, but at the cost of health of the people. So remember large manufacturing, heavy manufacturing. We were dumping, we had a company, a factory on Sydney Harbour, that it was at the end of Balmain. It was Balmain Wharf back in the olden days, and it was dumping heavy metals into the harbour. Oh, the harbour's tidal, and it'll just wash out to sea. Well, it contaminated the area so bad that they had to dredge most of the material out. It's still contaminated. It's still a place you shouldn't swim. And even just lead paint. Lead paint got swapped out for water-based paint because of the toxins. And underneath the Harbour Bridge, where people will use this as a simile, it's like painting the Harbour Bridge, because the moment they finish, they've got to start again. It takes so long to complete it that they've got to start again and paint it again. And that includes scraping the paint off and painting new paint. But the paint was lead-based paint, and they've been doing it for 50 years before they, transitioned away from lead-based paint. And the parkland beneath the Harbour Bridge, it's grassed. It's a grassed area where mothers would bring their kids and they'd just run around and play, as kids do. A study was done on the amount of lead in the soil, and said I wouldn't even bring your children to the park, let alone let them play for any length of time. So Freon, we got rid of Freon, though that is such a good refrigerant. It does my head in that we've transitioned to a less good refrigerant, but who am I to say that? So we've allowed polluting because it made money until it got so severe people complained. We've allowed sugar to be on the good list and fats to be on the bad list for some reason, when they're round the other way. That was sponsored by the sugar industry. That was a war between fat and sugar. And sugar won. Think about all the things that contain sugar. In America, Mickey, I don't know if you know this, peanut butter has molasses in it.
Yeah, look.
Our peanut butter doesn't. It's just peanuts.
No, it should just be peanuts, but
Yeah.
it's high fructose corn syrup that won the battle there, right? Which is a bad sugar, but it's a byproduct of the well, guess what, the corn manufacturing industry. So high fructose corn syrup is in America is in 90% of all the things that you have in the shelf in a supermarket. You will find high fructose corn syrup. It's fructose. It's corn. That must be good.
Corn's good for you,
Yes.
right?
Sodium benzoate.
Oh boy, now you're talking. Give me those 600s, quick. So, Mackie, that on all the days that we should have our show number 666, on all the days, being the 15th of December 2024, I found a video it's called End is Near with a question mark. What's coming on December 15th, 2024? The Truth Revealed. And it's talking about Nostradamus. I'm not saying any of it's real.
Really?
Just remember, you don't know what was... Yeah, I'm giving you a copy of it. So, yeah, it's funny. And on our show number 666, that's fantastic. Could the alignment be better? And it's even a full moon, apparently. It's a full moon.
Yeah, no, it's last night. I mean, it shone into my kitchen. It is bright. It's very bright. I could have read the newspaper about it.
Yeah.
But it's really strange that these things are happening. And you're right. They've pushed things off the page, like I said before. So it looks like the war in the Middle East, like Gaza and the Lebanese-Israeli war, they're over because they're no longer generating headlines. The Ukraine war is over; it's no longer generating headlines, and everybody's got their eyes on Syria now, right? Which was an enormously fast development for the world. But if you really think about it, it made sense because Russia couldn't really support Syria anymore, and then all just goes by the very quickly. And the same could happen to Mr. Putin.
Mickey,
if he doesn't.
What's the last country in the list of countries?
It's only one more.
It's only one more. Yeah, I know you know what it is. So it was Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and
Libya as well. Libya was there.
Libya and Iran. They
and Iran. Iran is the last to be taken. And in fact, there was in the book by Brzezinski, I think it was called The Grand Chessboard. I've got the book here somewhere. But in the late 90s, he outlined what America needed to do with the Institute for New American Century. I think it was called the Center for New American Century, whatever it was called.
Sure.
I think it was CNEC. CNEC, Center for New American Century, which was the new hawks, Bush Jr. and Cheney, etc., etc. It was their policy, and in mid to late 90s when the list was compiled, and the very last country standing is Iran. And the funny thing is this is the funny thing: Libya, Lebanon. So Libya was not responsible for the Lockerbie bombing. I want to be very clear, right? But we'll get to that at some other point maybe. Anyway, so Libya, certainly Lebanon, Iran, Syria. Did I say Lebanon? I think I did say Lebanon, right? And Iraq were secular democracies. They were not ruled. They were not governed by Sharia law, meaning they didn't. I mean, they might be majority Muslim, and doesn't mean they had Muslim law. They were just.
That's right.
Like Turkey, which has, in fact, the Swiss law and constitution, or adopted it anyway after the revolution of the Young Turks, just after World War One. Secular democracies. This is important, and then come especially America, but many of the Western allies and topple the democratically elected leaders of those nations and install their people, which some of the people didn't like, and that's what led to quite a few Islamist uprisings, certainly in Iran. And now we saw later on, when Iraq fell, we had the rise of ISIS. Libya fell, there was a chaos there for a while as well. Syria has now fallen to a rebel group that was no longer, but it was associated with ISIS as well as Al-Qaeda, right? The guy that's leading us was fighting with both of those.
Mm-hmm.
Now he says, no, we don't want that anymore. We're just going to focus on Syrian nationalism, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fair enough. Of course, Lebanon is a basket case, but Lebanon was such a prosperous. It's just a shame. The only country that nobody really cares about is Jordan. It's so small and nobody cares, and it's like 80% Palestinian because it's full of refugees, right? So nobody really cares about Jordan. But you're right, though. Iran is the last country left on the list. And like I said, these were all more or less secular democracies. And the people that we would have considered probably our natural enemies in the West, I'm talking when I say us, I mean the West, right? It would be Saudi Arabia, the states, which are following an extreme form of Islam called Wahhabism, which is the most recent form of Islam, and it can be, I guess, equated to like a born-again Christian, I guess.
But fervent. We buy fuel from them, and we can't do anything.
Brother, see,
sorry,
that's
what?
the thing.
What did I say?
Don't start your car. But I would suggest that all these things have happened because these secular democracies were the enemies, more or less, of Saudi Arabia. Okay, and the Americans and the other Western allies did whatever they can to aid Saudi Arabia in their fight. And when I say Saudi Arabia, I'm really talking about the Saud family, yeah, because the Saudi Arabians or the Arabs living in Saudi Arabia, they have a completely different agenda. They're quite devout, and they would never work with America. And Aramco in their eyes is an abomination, which is the Arab American oil company, right? An abomination. Having Americans in America or having any Westerner that is not a Muslim in Saudi Arabia is blasphemy. It's the sacred ground, Mecca, Medina, the two holiest sites of Islam, right? Nonetheless, America has chosen its ally, Saudi Arabia, and has done its best to make sure that, well, we've pretty much flattened all the enemies. I mean, Yemen is now gone, really, right? The Houthis, they're not really, they've been severely degraded by the recent bombardments. Israel took it upon themselves to degrade a lot of the Syrian strategic capability, but they want to have a good relationship with Syria anyway. It's like the lunch bully punches you in the face, breaks your nose, takes your lunch money, but says, "Hey, I'm gonna come over tonight. I'm gonna watch."
Yeah, what are you doing afterwards? Yeah.
Make sure there's popcorn. Yes, sir. No, Dave, it's nuts. And you're right. The last country left standing is Iran, and I'm just curious now to see what happens with those guys. But you know what happened? And this happened 3 weeks ago, but it was only reported yesterday. This is interesting. It's completely unrelated, but I think we should mention it. Do you remember Suchia Balaji?
I'm sorry.
He was an OpenAI researcher. He was working for OpenAI.
Oh yeah.
And he had turned into a whistleblower. So he had spoken publicly against artificial intelligence company OpenAI, against their practices.
Yeah.
And saying,
I know what they were. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. The violating copyright, etc., etc. And he was found dead. And he's 26 years old, and he was found dead on November 26th. And after police said they received a call asking officers to check on his well-being,
yeah,
the medical examiner's office determined his death to be suicide, and police found no evidence of foul play.
Of course.
And Epstein did not kill himself. But just want to say that here.
So it would have been funny if the police officers were using, hey ChatGPT, did he kill himself? And it goes, no,
No.
he didn't.
Are you sure? Yes.
Yeah, you should just wind it up. It's an open and closed case of suicide. There you go, done.
Yeah, well, done. But yeah, so that's something. So look, I don't know.
I
Let's
thought
see,
you were going to bring up geopolitical unrest for a minute there, because
look, yeah, no, but since you mentioned it, right now, the lid is off the pot, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lid is off the pot. It's a free fall because the big powers are busy, and we're just a month away, 6 weeks maybe, before our geopolitical world is going to change fairly significantly.
Mm-hmm.
I reckon within the first 6 months of Donald Trump's presidency, he'll want to do a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
He wants to get right in there because he's only got 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
if he stays, if he sticks to his term. But
Yeah.
so the Ukraine knows that all money is going to dry up, right? I mean,
That's right.
you got to be a moron not to realize this. So whatever's going to happen, I mean, could big things be afoot for the next month, 6 weeks? Sure. Biden will try to pump as much aid into those guys as he can. I would suggest that if the Europeans don't pick up where the Americans are leaving off, Putin is going to
He'll take Ukraine.
take it, because there are only two ways this war will end, in my opinion. One,
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine is going to run out of bullets, or the
Yeah.
Russians are going to run out of bodies. Those are the two.
So,
Right?
okay,
I
so
don't
that-
see any negotiation.
on the same
Right.
side, on a different side of the same cube. It's either Russia stops fighting, or they keep fighting.
Yeah.
Until they've got it. That's what I see, because the defense of it is something else. I heard that there's Polish troops on the border of Belarus, ready to go.
Oh, Europe is mobilizing, and defense spending in European nations and NATO nations has gone up. I don't want to misquote, but I think it's about 28%. That's
Mhm.
a lot.
Mm-hmm. For
And-
GDP, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, 28%. And I don't know. I mean, as a reference to itself, it's gone
Yes,
up by
that's right.
28%.
I get you.
But if the Ukrainians receive the aid and they kill enough Russians, so there are actually no Russians left to be sending against the Ukrainians, because they've already
Mhm.
gone to other countries to get their soldiers. They've emptied their prisons, right?
Yeah,
They're causing social upheaval in Russia because of those prisoners returning to Russia.
that's right.
They've got North Koreans now fighting as well, okay? And people say, World War III is going to be upon us soon. No, that's not true. We're already in World War.
We're already right in the middle of it. Yeah.
Now, the Western allies haven't declared war against Russia,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't really have to, because
It really just takes a foot on the ground, though, doesn't it?
well, we have found people in French uniforms on the ground,
Yeah,
dead, fighting.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you can.
So that's already
anyway.
happened. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but officially no war declaration, because it's always good to do it via proxies. And I mean, that's the Cold War all over. But it's a really interesting scenario now where Ukraine is being propped up, because now it's being propped up. Before, I mean, initially they were really fighting hard and did it themselves, and completely surprised the Russians. They're so surprised. I mean, they really were surprised. Now
Mm-hmm.
the Russians are striking harder, though, much harder, and the Ukrainians are, I mean, there's now some really heavy weaponry in play. I mean, really heavy weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Not nuclear, which thank goodness, but there's certainly very heavy ordnance. And if the Europeans keep pumping that into Ukraine, and maybe, because I mean, the argument could be made, well, Putin brought in Syrians. He did bring in Syrians. He brought in Africans.
Mm-hmm.
He brought in Nepalese, and now he brought in North Koreans
Yeah.
as mercenaries, if you will, right? But
So
North
how
Koreans,
is it not
as
fair if I
mercenaries.
do the same thing, right? That's the
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, but now you could argue that the initial ones before the North Koreans, they were all mercenaries, and fair enough, you can send a mercenary force to Ukraine, and we know that peoples of different nations have fought in Ukraine for Ukraine, like Australians, Americans, etc. They have, not under their own banner, but the North Koreans are not going in as a mercenary force. They're fighting as North Koreans. That's the difference. This is where it gets
Yeah.
complicated. And you could make the argument, well, if you bring in North Koreans, I can send a battalion of Polish soldiers in. Why not? Why not? Now, at this point, though, would Putin be, because he can't fight Europe. Like, if Europe mobilizes, because she's short, he can't even defeat Ukraine, right? Conventionally, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
As soon as, if Europe were to mobilize against Russia, Putin cannot win that war conventionally. He would have to resort to nuclear weapons. But if he were to do that, that would be the end of Russia. Now, it might be the end of most of Europe, potentially, right? But it will be the end of Russia. And I just don't know that the Russians are going to stand for it. I mean, this is not like an existential kind of fight. I mean, Putin started it by invading the Ukraine, and whatever reasons there were, it doesn't really matter anymore, to be honest. So the Ukraine is, sorry, Russia is not being attacked. This is all, on Ukraine's part, is still all defensive, right? But if Russia keeps going and it looks like the Ukraine is going to fall, the Europeans are going to think, this is Hitler all over. If we let that happen, who's to say that Putin is going to stop? No, he might stop. Dave, he might stop. He might just say, okay, all I wanted was the Ukraine, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
But Europeans have a long memory, and that doesn't feel right? They go, can we believe that?
Not really. Yeah.
Not really. And before you know it, they will have Polish boots on the ground. Germans are now allowed to deploy outside of Germany, funnily enough, so are the Japanese. The French might come in, right? The rest of the Europeans, except for Hungary, might come in. The Hungarians will definitely not contribute anything. The Turks will contribute troops, simply because they are right in the middle of it. I mean, in fact, the only warm water port that Russia has is in the Black Sea. And in order to get out of the Black Sea, you have to pass through the Turkish territory. So the Turks know that whichever way this goes, they're going to be right in the thick of it. So
that's right.
It's really...
So, Mickey,
people
you
underestimate.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, you mentioned that the lid of the pot has been removed, and it's. I had a joke there when you started. As soon as you started talking about the melting pot or the boiling pot, I've just gone, oh, there goes my pressure cooker joke. You took all the pressure off, but I like what you did with it. So, if a single nuke, if Russia was to do a tactical nuke even into Ukraine, to just make a point and go stop it, or hit Kiev or something, I don't know, then I wonder how that would be viewed. Or is that game on, or is it game off? Does that back everyone away, or does even a tactical one, does that make everyone become more engaged? It's a thought experiment.
But you have to realize one thing, and most people forget this, right? While the conventional arsenal Russia has is well below par, they still have the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world.
Yeah, that's right.
By far.
Mm-hmm.
By far. Much bigger than even the American stockpile. Is it all going to work? I don't know. But it's there. So a tactical nuke, in my opinion, would not be enough to bring about all-out war. I don't think so. It would turn Russia into a pariah state immediately, though.
Yeah.
And we might see, even China would distance itself from Russia at that point, 100%. Mm-hmm. North Korea will still be there. India is going to go, immediately they go on high alert.
Yeah.
Immediately they will. China will go on high alert as well. Europe will be in high alert. Everybody with DEFCON 1 everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay? And it'll be a very grave step for Putin to take. But again, I mean, he doesn't seem to care, Dave.
That's right.
I've lost 800,000 Russians, either to injury or death.
Yep. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Have we won it yet? Right. That's the only question. So, I hear what you're saying loud and clear, and no one that I know has a clearer view of European politics and the way it runs, Becky, than yourself. So, I do, and it's openly doing this. I'm doing this on air because I'm with you all the way. And I don't want anything to happen. If they're going to do anything, I think they'll want to do it before January 20th.
Yeah.
So whatever's going to happen is more likely to happen, in the next, 35 days, right? Whatever's left. So, look, it annoys me because I always thought you couldn't do land grabs anymore. I
know, right?
I thought that was over. Right?
Yeah.
It's funny, Mickey, because I heard people.
Right?
Yeah, I know. That's so 20th century. So I heard people talking about this and saying, well, but America's been in and toppled all these places all around the world, specifically the Middle East. And I said, yeah, but they didn't take the land for themselves, right? If you want to make any positive from it, that would have to be it. None of it worked, I'm going to say. None of the toppling, because we mentioned this last week, none of the toppling a government in a disputed area where that style of governance is the only thing keeping it all together. Yeah? So none of doing that is going to turn it instantly into a democracy, because the democracy is what just broke you. And do you think that's going to be a good thing? Are you immediately going to turn? Let's say it was the other way around. Let's say a dictator overthrows your country's government. Are you going to believe in, dictatorial governance? No, probably not. Is it going to change the way you operate? Probably not. Just like in Syria, all the rebels then climbed for King of the Hill to run the place, if you noticed. They didn't go, well, that dictatorship was, thank you, US and whoever you were, thanks for that. We'll have an election now, and we'll see what happens. No, it didn't happen. So, we spoke about the world police and how America's likely to pull its head in and not do it anymore. It's way too costly. America doesn't actually have the budget for it. If you're talking, rather than putting it on a credit card. Imagine you shared a house. I've shared many. I've lived in share housing before, and there's always one flatmate that doesn't make any of the money, but they buy everything. It's all on credit card, and then they ended up just moving out and disappearing, and all their mail builds up after that. Who knows whether they ever got caught up with by the bank, but that's currently America, and it can't continue to keep doing that. Australia, we've got the same problem. We're in, let's call it a recession apart from our government spending, just keeping it afloat enough not to completely fall in the toilet. If we're circling the drain, they're paddling to make it so we don't go down the drain. Does it make sense? So we can't talk either. We're doing the same thing. Our government is doing the same thing in our country. And the way out isn't to continue to spend money. Maybe the way out is to eliminate the government's requirement to own the money to make it prosperous. Maybe they don't need to do that. Maybe all of their stuff should be fully funded. And I hark back to, America in the early days, where before taxes happened, the government was going great guns. The economy was going great guns. We talked about this, Becky, right?
100%. Because they couldn't overspend, because they didn't have any.
That's right. We just print the money.
Funny, once you give someone a credit card,
yeah,
that's like giving a teenager a credit card, right? Yeah. To your point. In America, initially, we just buy everything cash. So it's funny, in Germany, even today, most people just pay cash or with their bank card, not a credit card, but their bank card.
Yeah.
And credit cards aren't accepted even in the supermarket, when I went there, this is probably 6-7 years ago, I went to the supermarket, and now you can't use a credit card. What? Either bank card or cash. If it's on your money, we don't want it. All right? It was quite something. And they told me, well, if you want to use your credit card, go to the airport. There's a few shops there where you can use it. It's okay.
The overpriced goods,
but,
duty-free goods, yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing, I mean, I know my dad had the Diners Club back when, in the 80s and the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
It was a charge card, which wasn't a credit card. You had to pay it off every month.
That's right.
You could not pay it off, right? So it was a charge card. And so we had Diners for business, whatever. But we didn't have a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
I know this. My mom always paid cash. And then when they had bank cards come in, she would use the bank card, but that's your own cash as well.
Yeah.
And now, but we've given America a credit card, right? Here it is. And you're right. It's like a drunken sailor on shore leave.
Totally.
Hey, look at me spending the money.
Everyone gets tattoos.
It's insane. It's nuts. You're right, though. It's except they can't move away. Right? That's the problem. The bank knows where they are.
That's right. Yeah. So my mum used cash. We only had cash. We didn't have. There was no cards. You had to go to the bank with your passbook and take money out. Remember?
Right.
But you knew the tellers. When you walked in, the tellers went, "Oh, hello," and they called you by name. Right? Everyone knew each other because that was the second most visited hub, apart from a coffee shop and the grocery store. Right? And everyone knew each other. So we did live in a community, a small community, but there in America, where I stayed, the people there, the professors from Cal State Uni, Fullerton, they were using checking accounts. So you had to balance your checking account, and I'll tell you, that's a struggle because you got money in the account, but you can't spend it because you've written a check against it. So this is your current balance. If everyone cashed the checks, how much would you actually have? That's amazing. And sometimes people drop the check, they don't cash it, and the money's sitting there and you can't spend it because you'll go into arrears. If they do happen to spend it, it's so if you've ever had to live through a checking account only, and I did when I was in the 80s before ATMs and being able to tap everything could happen. We used to go to ATMs and get cash out, but I had a checking account. I used to use that for mail order stuff. I'm just kidding, but like the back of the cartoons, the comic books. Got my X-ray glasses. Becky had to wait ages. That's a Simpson gag. But anyway, so that's the way we lived, and it's completely different now. And if the governments actually had to do that, only spend the money they had, could you imagine the changed world we'd have? Imagine the promises the government could only make. They go, look, we're sorry, but leading up to this election, we're going to change the system after we get in, right? Or we can't talk about anything and what we're going to give you. There's no gifts. It's going to be a lean Christmas, kids, right? But this is what we're going to do. And we hope to try and get everything back into the black. And because it's in the red and we can't keep doing this. I would imagine you wouldn't last the period before you see. Let's come a minute early. I think the station's a minute early, to be honest. Anyway, this is the first hour of David Mackey's Shiny Side Out. You can catch us on YouTube and Rumble. And in the second hour, we're going to have a new stream. And the stream is going to be discussing human medical experiments, part 5. Take the time to catch up as well.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.